Welcome back to another episode of Humankinder. When we examine a lot of the information coming to us about the world today, it seems pretty dark. There's ecological collapse, there's economic instability, there's mental health crises, there's war. And yet, spiritual traditions for thousands of years have urged us to see that there is wonder, there is awe, there is beauty, there's an order amongst all of the chaos. And in today's world, it can seem like a rebellious act to fall in love with life. And there's a deeper paradox, which is, can we fall completely in love with life and still work tirelessly to make it better? And my guest today really straddles that tension. He's held CEO positions at organizations like Weleda and GoVita and many others. And he's now turning his attention to social change, organizational change, and inspiring the leaders of the future to really create the future that we would all want to live in. And all the while has worked on his own deep inner journey. David Johnston, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Kane. That's quite an introduction.
Yeah, it's nice to frame it up, I think, and drop us in, because I'm curious, when you look out on the world today with all the hope and the hopelessness and all the chaos and everything, what is it that you actually see?
I see chaos and confusion. I see joy, delight, and the whole mix of everything. And it depends for me, quite frankly, on how much I focus on what part of what, when, as to how life is. But the more I can come back to what I call tending to my garden, and you'll find that I have a lot of little sayings and I love to throw them in there. Tending to my garden means, what is it that I do to nourish myself? If I'm doing the things that helped things to bloom and blossom within me, if I'm nurturing the things that will make a difference for me to be able to feel like a conscious human being, then I see the weeds. I see the bugs that want to attack me. But the more I can deal with looking after that garden, the harder it is for the bugs to bother me. And I see the weeds and I can pull them out. But if I concentrate more on what the weeds are doing or what the bugs are doing, then my garden doesn't grow as well. And in some ways, I think our responsibility is that this life is really quite amazing. It's a gift. And when I actually get that gratitude for this gift, then I don't want to stop looking after that garden, because that is my responsibility. I mean, really, just think about it. This is our life. I don't know. It started, it will end. Maybe there's other lives. I don't know. I can have a theory about them, but it's a theory. I can listen to people's beliefs about them, but my experience is in this life. So my time is to make the best of it in this life as I possibly can.
Yeah, I love that frame and just the empowering nature of that, because so much externally we ultimately can't control. Like the metaphor of the gardener, it's like the plants are going to grow, the weather's going to change, all different things can happen, and often we can't predict them. But what we can predict and control and work with is our own inner connection. Can you take us back to some of the moments, some of the challenges maybe in your life that helped you come across this path? Can you tell us a little bit about where all this started for you?
Well, I always, the one that it keeps coming back whenever I'm asked this type of question was when my mother was sick when I was 11 or 12. And my mother I'd never known her to be sick. It was really one of those strange things. And I just, for some reason, that kicked me into what is death? And it was like, if I look back and go, why did I even go there? But because it was such an unusual thing. And I remember walking out in my backyard, living in Randwick, and, there was open sky, and I sat out there and just kind of went, and then I looked up, and it just was that thing of, how can that not end? How can those stars go on? How can, I didn't know much about science. How can it just, and I just was blown my mind. And for a brief moment, I don't even know why this made sense, but I kind of felt that I could put it in a bottle. And it just gave me a little bit of relief. And then I went, but what's outside the bottle? And when you're a 11, 12-year-old kid, that just blows your head. And that sat with me. I don't understand this. I don't know if I'll ever understand it. But I know that there is some sense of an experience within me that that kind of makes sense to me. I can't fit it into my head, but I can fit it into something else that really resonates with how life is supposed to be. And with the gardening thing, I use that in businesses all the time. I mean, to me, a good business is being a good gardener because you have to do all of the different things. You have to make the compost. You got to pull the weeds. You got to make the beds ready. You got to do the seedlings. You got to do the little ones. You got to do the others. You got to be pruning. You're doing all of those at the same time. And the parallels between running a business and running your own life really sit very closely if you allow them to. So life is what it is, and it's our opportunity to make the most of it and to do the best we can in there. And I know for me, when I feel the best is when I'm feeling like I'm contributing in some way, in some minor way, to what's going on.
Yeah, it's so much in what you shared. And, I relate that I had a similar experience when I was very young, and I put my two hands over my eyes and I made it really dark. And then in that darkness, I was like, is this what death is like? This thought just came. And I remember it filled me with so much fear that I ran around the corner of my house. I just kept running. Right? And it's like at a certain point in our lives, we're confronted with this reality of death being part of life. And you mentioned to me that, you've experienced that with your father and with your stepfather as well. And how much did those early experiences with your parents and with your mom and all of that shape who you are today?
Everything mixes in, I mean, everything it changes. We're never a fixed thing. We're always in constant change. By, the conversation we're having here, I'll leave here and I'll be a little bit different. You know what I mean? It's like that's always doing it. So you have significant things like that. I always was told my father died within a month of me being born. Then I found out recently that it was a year after I was born. And that changed my perception of it because that meant I had a relationship, which I'd never thought of before. So I'm kind of, I don't know how to process it, but it just alters things. My stepdad, when he wasn't really my stepdad, but that's another story, I didn't really know him because when we moved to Australia, because I was born in England as well, when we moved to Australia, my mother was working, he was working. I was so young, I was maybe going to preschool or something. My sisters would look after me. So he was just this being, and then he wasn't there. So how it influenced me, I don't know, but I know my mother influenced me. My mother I never remember being in trouble with my mother. I never remember anything other than love. And there was a lot of time I gave her a good reason that she could have. If I won't even go there, but I experimented in life. From that thing of wondering about the stars and everything else, it just, I got into life. By the age of 16, there isn't anything that I can remember that I haven't done by the age of 16. So 17, I was then doing yoga and fasting and into, all of that because I'm squeezing, trying to find something that makes sense to me. At 19, I've moved into an ashram. I was there for 3 years, still squeezing, trying to see what it is. And, a lot of the time you're just seeking what is this thing. And when you've got a really fast-moving mind and a very active body, you're going at it hell for leather in every way that you possibly can. And you can see that that's the same with everybody. It's not just me. Everyone does it differently. But somewhere in amongst there comes that thing where what actually gives me that sense of feeling me? What gives me joy in being alive in this world? And that was the thing that I kept on trying to move towards. And now I've got this little thing that I play with. You know, you come up, sometimes things hit you and it's like, wow. And then short times later, instead of it being like a realization, it's a concept of realization. So it's never quite the same. But this thing of being aware of where you are, making a choice from there what you want to do, and then practicing. And the thing that's occurred to me of late is often I practice like I'm a black belt, but I'm not. I'm a white belt with a little yellow tag. And when I practice from that point, I learn my next lesson and I move forward from there. And it's almost as if that gave me greater freedom, because then I can be aware of whether that's working. I can make a choice to adjust it. Then I'll step a little bit further along. So it's not that I ever get to, maybe there's people out there that get to a point of realization and samadhi and nirvana and all of that. For me, I'm enjoying every day just seeing how much I can live my life more fully. And sometimes my choice is, bugger it, I'm going to forget about it for a while. But that's the choice. And then because there's like that little practice, I go, well, that's not really feeling as good as I would have liked it to. I'm looking for a shortcut, but I've really got to practice the next bit as a white belt with a little yellow tag, if that analogy makes sense in there.
Yeah, I love the humility in it, because one of the things that I love about your framework is there's awareness, there's choice, and then there's practice. And then in the next moment, there's awareness and there's choice and there's practice. And then the next moment is coming and the next moment is coming. And in some ways, you are just how you are being in each moment. And that changes so much. And so you're constantly being humbled by life. And there's the next thing and there's the next thing. And I love that approach to it because it's a really inside out approach. And I wanted to go back into those experiences at 17, 18, 19, because to me, there's something beautiful about that time in our lives that our society doesn't quite fully understand, I feel, is like that inner urge, that seeking. It looks like almost self-destructive behavior, going out and maybe there's, maybe you're drinking, maybe you're doing other things, you're using substances. But always in my own experience, I realized that what I was doing was I was experimenting with inner states. I was like seeking on some level. And you ended up in an ashram then. What was that experience like? Can you take us into your experience going in there and what you felt like you came away with?
The ashram, it gave me great comfort because there was a routine and I could excel in the routine. I could get up at 4:30 in the morning, do the meditation, do other things, go and help in whatever way I could, go to a meeting in the night, do more meditation and get into the routine. But my teacher closed them all after a few years because it was like we were relying on that being what life is about. And it isn't what life's about. It's fine to go off in a retreat and do those things. And for some people, maybe that is what it is all about. And I think that that's a wonderful thing. But in general, we are in this day and this age. And therefore the message and the learning is in this day and this age. And the need is in this day and this age. So breaking out of there at first was like, oh my God, what's happening? Which is why I probably ended up married and with 3 kids by the time I was 28. But within that, it gave me a grounding, and that grounding has not left. And I still have the same understanding of 3 principles, which is the meditation or whatever you want to call it, the thing that connects you more with who you are and connects you more with nature and therefore in general with all beings and more than beings, Then other is the company of truth. They call it satsang, that thing that you and I have not only here, but at other times. That thing that opens you up, that sometimes you're sitting there and you don't know if it's your voice saying it or my voice saying it, but all you know is that there is something that is being communicated that is rich and we're both gaining from it. And in that richness, there's a reminder. And I need reminding. My teacher reminds me. Other people remind me. I remind me when I'm doing that. I listen to podcasts, yours and others, and that reminds me. And then there's doing things in this world. And there's a lot of things that you can do, but there's the doing of things that are helpful for other people. And for me, I just find that when you do that, there's such a richness that comes back to you. Now, there's 2 points in that. There was one time that I know that I was doing so much for others, but I wasn't doing it from here. I was doing it from here. And, was that wrong? No, it was the time that it was. And it's better to be doing it from here than not doing it at all, because as you put yourself in that arena, you're at least opening yourself to the lessons that goes, God, you got a lot of ego in that one. And, what I found, and it was really quite interesting, is have you ever, random acts of kindness?
Mm-hmm.
When you do a random act of kindness and you tell no one, right? No one else knows it. Maybe the person that you've done something for, someone on the train the other day didn't pay their fare. And it was like, I can pay it. It's $7 or something here. They don't have to do it. But not telling, now I've told people, but not telling anyone,
Yeah.
It's like having a bottle of champagne going blah, 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 inside you. And it's really quite a strange phenomena. How can I feel good by not telling someone? And it's because I feel good in here, not in here. And that's kind of a really interesting twist. And things, we're living in a life now that we're consuming life. We're not quite living it in a way. And that's okay as well, but it's good to be open to what are the lessons that are being taught to us that bring us back to living that fullness and richness of life as we move along. And you'll have to forgive me. You'll ask a question. I'll probably start on responding, but I can go anywhere. So always feel free to bring me back if need be.
Hello there. We'll get back to the conversation in just a sec. But first I want to share about something that's very close to my heart right now. I've been working with the Soul Alignment Method and Miles Trainer, who's been a guest on this podcast for the last number of years. And through that work, I've really learned how to uncover my own purpose, the elements of my own unique purpose blueprint, and now to help others do the same. And as part of Soul Alignment Method, the vision is a world where everyone knows who they are, why they are here, and can live it in this lifetime. This allows us to really make decisions that are in our highest alignment around career, around relationships, around lifestyle, location, and around our physical health and all the other areas of our life. If this is something that's interesting to you, you can visit my website at www.humankinder.com.au and contact me there, or go to the link tree in the description, which has all the links on my WhatsApp. And I would absolutely love to work with you on this if it feels in alignment. Thank you. And now back to the show. No, one of my favorite sayings in podcasting is there are no tangents. There are no tangents. Yeah, I want to just ground us in those three practices, because I think having a robust and well-rounded practice is really important. Meditation is a beautiful practice, but if only meditation, I think then you end up missing out on other arenas that you can use to develop the self and realize. And so you shared meditation, you shared what's traditionally known as karma yoga, action yoga, like in the world service, right? Being really involved in the world. And then you also had satsang, which was relating to people and the seeking and the speaking of truth. It's almost like conscious relating, seeing other people as a mirror. And on one level, being aware that within each one of us is that same divinity. And yet on this plane right now, you and I are experiencing life through different bodies. And in all of these practices, what I sensed as the undercurrent was dropping out of the mind and into a heart-based way of being, because as you said, you can do all the acts of kindness, but if you're doing them from the head and not from the heart, if you're not really doing them from this place of open-heartedness, then in some sense you're not really doing them. And so how have you found, as going through life and going through the ups and downs and, leading organizations and, great results and all sorts of catastrophes? I know you've gone through many challenges in your life. How have you found ways to keep your heart open and keep coming back to that open-heartedness? What has that journey been like?
I'm going to just take that a little bit further. For me, it's the head, the heart, and whether it's the gut or something else.
Beautiful.
And sometimes they are all connected. And when they're all connected, it's like it's really whole. So even in the Mastery of Business and Empathy thing I did, they call it head, heart, and hand, just to make it sound good, I think. But it's that sort of thing. And how it happens is somewhere in there, all of us, I feel, kind of crave this thing, and we don't know how to do it, which is why we race around doing stuff. Like when I used to surf a lot, you take off in a big wave, you drop down and you turn, you are not thinking. When you run, as you do, through nature, at a point you can have thoughts, but then you're out of your thoughts. So it's that state of being out of our thoughts that generates that we're now in this moment, in this movement, in the moment, in the action, in the whatever else. And meditation can bring us into there. Then you can float off and then you can come back and everything else. So that is the most cherished thing that all of us are connected to. We go about trying to find it. I mean, I've jumped out of planes, I've bungee jumped, you name it. There isn't many things that I can think of, and each of them give you something. But when you can that is inside us. It's always there. But we don't always connect with it as deeply as we can. So we try all of the other things to try and find that thing that is always there. We go out seeking, is it in her? Is it in this? Is it in this? So I think when you've kind of been open to it, it naturally tends to want to do that. This whole thing isn't about giving us a hard time, to my way of thinking. And I know there's a lot of suffering in the world, but a lot of it, is brought on by other people, by other situations and where you're born and how life is. But I see it a lot of the time like there's a road, right? And it's a little bit windy and it's a road. And life is just in that road. That's where it exists. And then there's a rumble strip, boom, boom, boom. There's the gravel, there's the shrubs, there's the trees, there's the boulders, and then there's the cliffs. I find myself up a tree and I go, who the hell put this tree in my road? And it's like, give me a chainsaw, give me an axe. I want to chop it down, but then there's another one and another one. And it's like, why are they here? Well, maybe they're just trying to tell me that there's a road over here that if I can come back onto, then I can kind of cruise along a little bit. And maybe I start to recognize a little bit sooner the rumble strips and the gravel before I have to go through the shrubs to find the tree. Should I be disappointed I've hit a tree? Yeah. But should I be thankful that it's helped me to come back to where I am? Yeah. And a lot of the time I wasn't. A lot of the time I kept trying to find those boulders and see what was on the other side. So there's nothing right. I'm not kind of, I really hope I'm not coming across preachy, but it's not anything in there. It's just try and listen. The more we can open up to that listening, what actually feels good. But we don't get, it's like if we say, the way you're going to be happy is you're going to meditate, you're going to listen to this sort of stuff, and it's like, I don't want to, just set yourself up for success. Do a little bit. Be the white belt with the little yellow tag and just do a little bit and go, oh, that's all right. go and do whatever you need to, and then come back and do a little bit and get like a routine within that. So that I do my, I hate saying it, journaling, but it's really been very beneficial for me. But I do an A5, so it's small, and I give myself the room that I can write as big as I want or as small as I want. So I'm successful because I can write "don't know" or all these little things. And life is like, there's so much going on. I might have to put it in tomorrow's as well, and just challenge yourself to look at it. That's almost like that awareness choice. Oh, what am I going to do? I'll try this tomorrow and see if that helps it as well. I did this thing once. At Weleda, I opened them up to doing mindfulness, so they could all come and do that. And this is like what I call preparing the soil so that things grow better in a business. So then we were practicing at work 10 minutes a day. That's all, but people would do more, and it was a really nice thing. Then I organized for one of our conferences for a lady that does emotional intelligence, EQ. And she came in and told us all about it, and I asked everyone, would you like to do this? And they went, yeah, we'd love to. So we were setting up a 6-month program of doing emotional intelligence. And she came in, and every month we'd have a talk and a conversation and discussion on, the critical, the way we talk to ourselves, on imposter syndrome, all of these things, people who do exercises. But before she started from the conference, she said, would any of you like some things to play with between now and when I come in? And she named a few things, and a couple of people went, I'll do that. And I went, I'll do that, and I'll do that, and one of them was noting your emotional state 8 times a day. And I was like, I can do that. And then another one was the journaling. So I started it then. I had done it before, and I've now kept doing it for the last several years, every day on that. The weird then she said for 66 days. So I've got 66 days of 8 times my emotions of how I was. And then this again. So that's a practice that I'm doing. I'm aware of what it is, so I'm writing that in my journal. I'm making a choice as to what I'm doing with those emotions as well. Does that make sense?
Mm.
And as I'm doing them, as I go along, it's like, a lot of the time when I just look at it at that point, my emotions, I'm thinking, is it interesting? Is it happy? Is it joyful? Is it content? Is it, because it wasn't all that bad, even when there was things happening. And there was one point I realized that, someone had done something. So I went, I'm angry. And then I thought, am I really angry? Or is it because this circumstance happened that I feel I should be angry? But that was their problem. Really. And it's like, that was such an interesting observation that we feel that we should be away, so we almost become that way, when in reality I was okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes beautiful sense. And I mean, what I'm hearing and just saying is as you consciously start to practice just more self-awareness, you start to become much more familiar with your inner landscape. And it's surprising what's going on in there. And it's surprising how much control we have of that, actually. It's like you show up into a situation where you go, oh, historically, I would have been angry. I would have seen people get angry. But actually, if I really, really look at it, I don't need to be angry. It's actually nothing got to do with me. And there's this saying, it's like, I happen the way I want to happen. And so the beautiful learning that I'm receiving from what you're saying is that there's actually no external circumstance that needs to trigger an emotion or a heavy emotion or to you to be any sort of a way. In many cases, it's just habitual patterns where we've responded like that before. We've seen other people respond. And I think that was implicit in what you're saying with the journaling and with the turning inwards and with all of this work, is that actually the answers are inside of us. We can think, oh, the teacher has the answer or someone else has the answer. But as you listen to your head, your heart, and your gut and start to become a little bit more fluent of the language of what's going on inside you, you pretty soon realize that you kind of do know what's going on. And I think that that's a really powerful and hopeful message. And you have been, in many ways, having, for me, worked in organizational development for a long time, a bit of a pioneer in bringing some of this stuff in as a CEO into organizations. And I'd love to hear your reflections and lessons from that, and of bringing stuff in that, on the face of things now, even in today's modern organizations, is not that common. That we truly start to look inwards, meditate and together as a team. How important has this dimension of your life and sharing it with others and helping others to connect to it, how important has that been in your business leadership?
I'm just going to jump back
For sure.
so to clarify. I can get angry, and
For sure.
that's not like you don't. What I now do is I don't get bothered by getting angry.
Mm.
You know what I mean? It's not like I'm angry, so I need to do something about it.
You don't judge yourself.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, well, that's that. Maybe I've got a reason. I'm angry, and I'm not trying to suppress it in a way. Also,
Yeah.
and it's an interesting thing anyway. So, with the different things I've done, it's because, again, I don't know where to start the story. The story is all weaved together. Where did it come from at first? How did this happen? When I was living in the ashram and we'd have events and things like that, there was one where we had 1,300 people over for a few days, and I looked after all the catering. So I'm 21. We got 1,200 people, 3 days vegetarian catering to organise. So in doing that, there was a fair amount that needed to be sorted out, but I had to use volunteer labour. And luckily I had willing volunteer labour, but at other times I've had semi-willing volunteer labour. So to be able to accomplish what you need to, you've got to find the way of working with these people. And I found that by telling them what I wanted them to do, they would have their opinion on that. But if I could bring them into the way of how to get something done, then they would have an ownership of that. And when they had an ownership, they wanted to make it work. So there's a lesson way back there, but maybe I only understood it years later that was what was taking place. The GoVita group was a group, when I started 69 stores, it got to 128 by the time I left. And initially they were a little bit, see, I'm being polite in case they're going to listen to this. They were all over the place in many ways, the whole design and everything else, and they'd been through the vision, values, mission and everything else. So it was like, how do I bring them around to working forward? Because the way I looked at it is, they're in a boat and everyone's going, okay, we got to get going, push, push, push. But they're all just pushing at whatever angle they needed to push. And they're creating more churn and they're not going anywhere. And their effort is going in, big effort, but energy dissipating everywhere. So how do I get the energy so it's heading in the right direction? Okay, so you can do a strategy, but they've done all of those. So I just worked on another way of doing it, which is, what does it look like when you get there? Tell me the things that someone will say about walking into your shop when we are at the point that you want it to be. So it's what I call future view to now. Paint me the picture, come back to now, find the clear path, don't look for the obstacles. Yeah? And that's how we change a business. And then tell me what are the things that you want to say at a point in time out there about your membership with the group. Oh, I want to say blah, blah. I want to say blah, blah. 2 single pages. Here you are. This is what you said. This is what I'm giving back to you as your strategy. Wow, that's what I want. Okay, so here are the ways we're going to do it. Great. The moment you set one up, and you say, okay, this group wants to do this, everyone's got an opinion. So you can join that group and you can be part of making the decisions, or you can lobby anyone in that group and give them your opinion of what they should be pushing for. But when the group makes a decision, you'll fully support it. Does that make sense to everyone? And you bring them into that picture and they went, sure, that makes sense because I can influence it if I want to. But if I don't want to influence it, I need to follow it, then I'll do it that way. So, you're constantly, I go, if someone now wants me to consult on their business, it's going to be different. I'm not, formulaic, whatever it is. I don't bring a set formula because everything is a little bit different wherever they are and how they do that. So if Weleda, we'd had spiral dynamics introduced from our parent company. And there is two elements to spiral dynamics. There's the Graves one that has a multiple of colors and goes from collective to individual, collective to individual. And then there's the Lalu one that has been adapted from that. And that has different ways of escalating. And I went somewhere in between the two. And the Lalu one is how do you have in essence, a self-determining organization so that the different sections in there are managing it. And the spiral has a bit of that, but not to the same degree. But when you blend them together, I find that it works much better than one or the other. So that's when I started to introduce that language within there. And if I can do it really short, and it's hard to find something that seemingly is complex, you go from tribal to hierarchical to bureaucratic to strategic KPI to relational communication to above the line into more of an overview of all of those things in the spiral dynamics. When you get up here, you choose how much to use those different elements because they're all relevant. But in a normal society, when you're in KPI orange just-in-time mode, and then people go, no, we want to know that everyone's going to be all right. We want to be in relationship. We want to say, are you okay? Then these guys are going, no, holding back. And that's what you're seeing in society. Whenever there's a change, a transition, there's a holding back as well. So it's like the changing of tides. The chop starts to come up. And it's not just in a business sphere. It's in the way that cultures are changing. It's every time there is any good done in the world, then there's always this chop. Right now we're in Chopsville, because there's so many people trying and doing so many positive things in the world, but there are all of these other elements going, no, we've got to have wars, we've got to control people, we've got to limit it. And it's almost like we've been dominated by the left hemisphere of our thinking for so long, and now the right hemisphere, the more open, more innovative, is trying to come out of there, and the left is going, no, we don't need art, we don't need all of these fields, what we need is you to be able to be working in a linear fashion. So we have all of those things taking place in there. So how did I know I'm jumping about on this one.
Don't worry, I got you.
Yeah, but within Weleda, we did these elements that was very much giving people the opportunity to feel an ownership for everything. So I could at times go away for 6 weeks, right, which I did overseas. They knew they could contact me, but I didn't have to say to anyone, this person's in charge. I had a steering group. In the steering group, I had the guiding principles or purpose of that group, that they were very clear what they were there to do. And we would meet weekly and see how things are going. And then one of them would take a steering wheel and then another one would take the steering wheel. And the company would move constantly ahead without all of the issues. Granted, when I came back, it felt like it needed a bit of juice being put in to get it moving again, but they could at least maintain something without me having to tell them what to do. But that changeover has to come with responsibility and trust. And therefore, you've got to go to the top, as I know you see in businesses, to make sure that they're willing. And I had to be willing to put myself out there so that they would see that I'm willing to do whatever it is that I'm asking them to do as well.
Yeah, there's so much in what you shared. And this is really what every business leader that I have ever met wants so desperately. Every single CEO I've worked with, they all want this collaborative, cooperative, high performing, learning organization where people are empowered to take accountability and they're taking ownership and all of the different things. And yet, despite all of their effort to make that happen, it simply does not happen. In fact, it often just gets worse. And I want to come back to a couple of things that you've shared in there and unpack it, because the first thing that I hear about your journey is that you are working on yourself first, because without that self-work to open up a little bit more, then when things get hairy with this approach, or whenever you start wanting to ask people what they are going to do and let them take ownership, they're going to make mistakes. You're going to have to give up control. You're going to have to give up the status of being the one who's making all the shots. And that's very uncomfortable psychologically for people, and particularly people who have gotten to the role of CEO from being the most competent, being the controlling, being the most high performing. And I'd love if you could talk us through maybe using spiral dynamics or explaining that a bit more, or another framework. But how did you go about creating those conditions? First of all, converting yourself into the gardener who was creating the conditions, and then actually creating the conditions and maybe some of the lessons that came along with that, some of the ways it went wrong, how it evolved. Can you talk through how you got to be able to work in this way sustainably?
Yeah, there's so many tangents that I could go off on in various things, and trying to condense a number of those and be able to bring some examples in takes time. So, if I go into a business, then I have to ascertain where the business is and then work out how to move them from there to where they want to be. And that's what I do. That's my new consultancy business, and I do that along those ways. But in Weleda, what I was doing was finding where they could help to work out how something would be, and questioning and listening. So it was more about, here we have the setup of we're moving from this warehouse to this warehouse. How can we do that as best we can, and who's going to be involved, and what is going to be required? So my key thing is always, what's it look like when we've got it? And then come back to where we are. That's my future view to now type of thing. Because a lot of people are looking for the obstacles that they need to overcome. And often when you start to deal with obstacles, you get rid of one and there's another one. And we become really good at enjoying the fact that we're fixing obstacles. We got a problem, we fix a problem. It's very masculine as well. It's like, tell me when there's something wrong and I'll come and fix it. But it's like, how do I not get wrong? How do I find a way through that gets me to where I need to be? And how do we respect each other within that? And that is within the communication that needs to take place. And if I can bring them into that sort of a picture, then there's a greater chance that they're going to want to make it work. And if they get a little bit of success and you feed that little bit more success in there, and if someone makes a mistake, you can celebrate it because you've learned a lesson that you wouldn't have learned if you hadn't done it. And, there was something that happened really bad at one stage and people were like, are you going to fire them? And it's like, I just invested this amount of money in them. I believe that now they have increased their value to us more than they would. Do you really feel I should get rid of them? And they went, no, we should keep them. And we should learn from that lesson as well. So it's how to open up those discussions within there. But you're absolutely right. It has to come back to, how do I want to be in this situation? How do I want not, and then help the others go, well, how do you want to be? So when we would start meetings, I would always try and start them in maybe either the meditation like we did at the beginning of this, or with a question. How are you, really today? And people would be, after a little while, be very honest. And once they're honest, you get them out of here and down here and even maybe further, then they're all wanting to make things work. Because, we have insecurities. Live with them a lot of the time. But when we see we're all on the same level, all doing the same thing, we're all having these things, these warning signals. The mind is there to tell us when things are going wrong. Our problem is we're listening to it constantly and we're not able to filter it. And that is having to step through. I think we mentioned earlier on, you can't stop things happening, but you can step through them and it's okay. I was going to go back to my school. I'm going to briefly. I think it's worthwhile. I had this horrendous thing at school where one time I was chatting to someone and the teacher said, "Johnston, read the next thing." And I looked down and then someone said, it's this page. And I was on that page and they said, and then the teacher went, "At the beginning, blah, blah." And I could see those words, but the rest of them started to dance. I picked up the next word and I was in a mutter. And then I heard giggling and then the hairs on the back of my thing and the heat rising in me and useless. And it was just like, I could feel it. The room shrank in and I just wanted to run and hide. And I spent years with that living within me and doing things, but always avoiding speaking in front of people until I just knew I had to, and I did Toastmasters and then I did other things and then other things. And then I've ended up, representing industry with government. So I've stood up in front of, 500 politicians, bureaucrats and industry people facilitating things. The microphone fell off and I twisted around and caught it. And by the end of it, people really loved it. And I've done other things and I've been on TV. Every time I still have to step through it. It's not like I lose it, but it's also my strength. Can I just step through? Because if I listen to this, it's warning me. There is danger there. You could fluff this terribly. And if you do, you're going to feel like it'll say everything. But if I step through, then I'm okay. And I think that's one of the, and having me being able to share that with people and share other things and share not what I want them to do, but share my story a little bit, not the glamorous things even, but just the things that relate to how they are and what they're going through, then they feel empowered as well and they feel recognized. And that's what people want.
Yeah, thank you for that vulnerability and for sharing those moments because we all have the residues of so many experiences like that. I remember speaking in front of a group and my hand was shaking so bad I couldn't read it and my voice was shaking so bad and I was in class and I was maybe 14 or 15 and I was just so nervous about, for some reason, just talking and everyone started laughing. Of course they did, right? It was funny. And that stayed with me. And then I went to Toastmasters as well, so I had to overcome that. And here, both of us are now speaking freely. I speak publicly for a living also, you as well. It's like we turn those challenges into art. They really are. They show us the ways of which we can be more free. And I think that inner journey cannot be underestimated. And the fact that you, as a senior leader, was willing to be that authentic and real with people, it does so much to create that culture that you want. Because I think every senior leader, they want this, but they're not willing to be it. And that's a really big difference because you cannot create growth mindset, psychological safety, accountability, whatever the buzzword you want to use, you cannot create it if you're not it yourself.
And I think one of the things there is, I don't think there's any tennis player that really excels that doesn't have a coach. I don't think there's any sports team that could do as well as they do without a coach, because they just stand back. So I guess that's what you're doing. What I'm trying to do is help people, help organizations. I don't even want to spend a lot of time with them. It's like I don't want to get into your organization, but I want to be able to get in there to just be that sounding board, that point of reference to say, yeah, just step through and see what it's like, or, whatever it is, or that was really well done, because that's what makes a difference. And sometimes when we didn't have it, it was hard. But fortunately, I've had different people at different times that have been very supportive in those things. And particularly when I pour out my insecurities, and it's like, yeah, they recognize them. It's not like we don't all go we all go through something. It may not be the same, but it's still the same remedy. We just need to be okay with ourselves. And it is okay. That this fear and insecurity that is now wrapped up in the world is because we've listened to this so much and it's fed so much that we need to actually let go. And it is okay. That's why, you said you related my awe and wonder in this world. When you just allow it, you start to see it. And when you start to see it, you see more of it. And that becomes the thing that you really want to cherish. And in every opportunity, if you can come back to that, then that makes a lot more sense.
Hello there. Just a quick one from me. If you're enjoying this conversation, the biggest thing that you can do to support the show is to hit the follow button if you're on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts, and please do rate 5 stars. And if you're on YouTube, hit the subscribe button and give us a like. All of these things are completely free. They really support our growth, and they also make sure that you get notified of any new content that comes out, so you don't miss a thing. Also, if you're interested, you can follow Humankinder on Instagram at human_kinder, where I'm posting many different clips across different episodes and sharing content along the journey. Thank you very much. I really appreciate your listening. And now back to the show. Yeah, I love that. And if you're being that in the world, if you're being in connection with that, all parts of yourself, and your heart is open to all parts of yourself, then you become the optimal condition in which, if it's in another person and they're ready, it will emerge. And I think that's one of the things I'm really taking from this conversation, is that this doesn't stop when you cross the office door. It doesn't stop. It's not something you reserve for your meditation. It's not something you reserve for your spiritual teacher, or it's not something you reserve for just your friends, or it's something that permeates every part of your life. And this whole idea of bringing your whole self to work, I think that's a beautiful thing, because when you can do that and be authentic, amazing things happen, because we're all just human beings. And so many places we could take it. I wanted to just, before we move on to some of the stuff that you're focusing on now, because I think you're doing really incredible things in the world today. When just to finally close off on the organizational side, and you mentioned spiral dynamics and that whole system, and you briefly spoke through some of the different parts of it. Could you break down a little bit, like, first of all, the value of having something like that, some sort of organizing idea that helps you make sense of the world and helps be a common language for people, maybe around culture or strategy? Could you break down a little bit, like, the importance of that, and then also what something like spiral dynamics or any of those models that are really good are actually how they're guiding us?
So there's one thing, and it will go into the next frame. I'm actually working with my best buddy, who you've met, and she has a practice on pillars, and we're going to get her doing her pillars, and I'm going to introduce some of what I do. So it'll be like a conversation around those different strategies. But a structure gives you freedom. Discipline gives you freedom. It allows you to have a fence around what you're doing, and then within there you can run around as much as you want, and I find that really worthwhile. The thing with spiral dynamics that I love is, so we go from tribal into hierarchical, so purple to red, to blue, bureaucratic, to orange, KPI just in time, those type of things, to green, which is the relational, and to the yellow.
Sorry, what's the yellow?
The yellow is kind of above the line and has a more conscious way of viewing things. And at the yellow is where you are not caught in any of them, but you will choose to use them like tools. And you can still do that when you're in them. And I've had within an organization, because you can map it and you go, oh, the manufacturing is really locked into the orange, the marketing is locked into the green, and the warehouse is very much in the whatever else, and this little department has red. If you do that, but you go, okay, blue is bureaucratic. Too much blue and nothing moves. Everything has to be ticked in a box. Too little blue and it's a free-for-all. What level do you need for the organization at that time in that place? And you define that, and you have to come back and review it because it may change. But you don't allow it to be locked just in the blue. You say, okay, how can that then work with the KPI just-in-time strategy and everything else? Because often, again, in that area, KPIs can kill you, can kill a business. They can be one of the most dangerous things, or if you bring life to them, they can give you a very good measure. But if you rely on them too much, same with strategy. A strategy was developed as war tactics. So if you really feel that your business is in war, then that's not bad, but a lot of the time that stiffens you up too much. But if you can loosen that up and go, how much do we need the strategy? Can we simplify so that everyone understands it? Can I be in a room with our people and can they tell me what our strategy is? Because if they can, then it's a living strategy. And then the same with the communication and relational. You can be way down here and you don't care what anyone's saying, or way up here that you care what everyone's saying. And once you recognize the extremes, and I've got a way of being able to measure them, just a question and answer thing that you get down the bottom and you go, well, you may not think you were, but you guys are way up here. And that's okay because you now recognize it. So you're aware of it. What choice do you want to make of where you should be? And can you practice that? And again, you're bringing in these elements that are allowing for an awareness that will make a difference to how they're running their business. And then you start to save time. You start to save effort. People are talking the same language. You come in and someone goes, we really need to get this done and this is the way I want to do it. And it's like, that sounds like it could be a little bit too blue in what we're trying to do. Do you think we need that? And they may have a reason why we do, or they may not. But being able to have that view on things, and that runs through the whole organization, gives you greater clarity of where you are and where you're going and why you're going there.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. I'm laughing here because the phrase you used, a living strategy, is something I've heard my own father, who has worked in this space for 30 years, he's continuously talking about that. And it goes back to what you said around, if you ask people, what is the work that needs to be done? What does great look like? What is your picture of this strategy? And they cannot tell you, then your strategy is dead. It doesn't exist. It's a fantasy. And this is one of the biggest challenges that I see continuously, is that the people at the top have a picture of what the abstract version of the strategy looks like, but nobody else has any connection to it or any clue about it. And so actually, what seems like a very complex thing that you've just shared is actually really simple. It's really simple in asking, hey, what does good look like? Where would you like to be? Okay, that's really interesting. How do you think we can get there? And just working in that way with people, taking a little bit more time then really speeds things up. And having a common language that everyone understands that is accurate, because this spiral dynamic sounds is very accurate, right? It speeds things up so much once you invest that little bit of time and really commit to it.
And you can step it in different phases in different ways. So, my whole thing is, again, here's where an organization is. Where do you want to be? And what is the part, what's that look like? And let's make sure that what that looks like makes sense. And then let's just come back to where we are and find the steps that will take us there. And at any point when we're not sure about the steps, go back up here and go, do we need to move that or do we need to move the steps? And it just becomes, I think it can be quite simple. And the simpler we can make it, the better. I have everything generally on one page. And the benefit of that, and that's generally 3 years out. And the reason for that is that often you'll go, okay, we need to move warehouse and put in your computer system. And then if you do that, you go, so who's going to be involved in the moving of the warehouse and what's that going to require? And what's the new computer system and who's going to be in there? And how much energy do we have in all of those areas to maintain the business that we've got to enable us to do all of that? And a lot of the time, there'll be so much crossover that you go, we're just going to swamp ourselves. It isn't going to work effectively. We can bring in more people, but what's going to require to do that? So it's that little bit of standing back and then getting close. So there isn't a right and a wrong. There is always just the play within. And play is another important part of it. I mean, one is what we feel is purposeful to us. Everything else is a zero. If you put the one at the beginning, then all the zeros can come behind. But if you put the zeros till you get to the one, then you're going to be caught up. It's like, I work hard, I do this, I do this, I do this so I can have a holiday, so that I can relax, so that I can enjoy myself. So you want to enjoy yourself. What about if we put that, not enjoy yourself, but you want to feel purposeful up here and then the rest comes. And I think that's where the cultural change in our society will come. And that's going to lead you into the next question is, what the hell am I doing?
Yeah, beautifully put. And what I love in what you shared is that everything's a question. Everything's a question, right? It's an open question. Where do you want to get to? There's possibility in a question. There's no possibility in a statement. Here's where we need to go, right? And it's the question that opens people up to possibility. And so I have many questions about the society that we want to create and where are we going. And when you look at future view to now on what's possible for humanity in our organizations and the way we organize ourselves, and I know you're actively working and thinking a lot about this at the moment, what are some of the questions that you're asking about the future?
What's the potential of emerging? Because there's lots of people working on what the issues are. And I think that that's a really necessary thing. Sometimes it's looking at problems and trying to fix them and then they get something else. But what are we like? What could we be like in a world where we are conscious human beings looking after all of the things that are precious to us, like the planet, nature, humans? What about how would we be if we put all of that at the front, like maybe used to happen in tribes of many years ago, because we are connected. We've come into separation. How do we come back into connection where, when you have a child, you've got the community that's raising it, that you know what's going on. And a lot of people have that now. There's a lot of people in that way, but there's a whole chunk in the middle. If we have a continuum, there's people here that are consciously aware that the world needs to be more connected, collaborative and everything else. There's people down here that just want to blow the the hell out of everything. And then there's a chunk in the middle that don't know where to go. And they're holding on more this way because of the insecurities that they feel. They don't even know why they feel insecure. It's again that thing of you slip back into insecurity when you don't know. It's the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you're not having this one met, then you just got to freeze. So we need to move that element and move them along there as best we can. But I believe that by doing random acts of kindness, by caring about how you live your own life and by looking after other people, we can start to move in that. And I'm not trying to create a function around that. It's what's the potential of emerging. And I think that there's ways that we can all play with that. And I don't know what it'll be. Because and that's the problem. People go, yeah, but what's it going to be? Well, you take a few steps and it becomes clearer what it's going to be. And if you keep moving in the right direction, then things open up. And if you start to, put your energy, your funds into how is the world that we want to really exist in, where people aren't consuming life, by buying things to try and get something out of it, but living life and sharing life and feeling good about that, then I think that's really the steps that we need to take. And enjoying it as we make those steps as best we can and collaborating and helping each other. And for me, sometimes my hand's up and someone's helping me, and my hand's down here and I feel good in both directions. And if we can have more people doing that, then I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, I love it. And one of the themes that, because I'm listening to the music behind the words, I'm listening to the way that you perceive and the way that you think. And what I've noticed is that you are continuously focusing on what you want, what good looks like, rather than focusing on all of the problems and how to solve them. And so you're saying, if we can, inside ourselves, connect to our innermost being, connect to the head, the heart, the gut, and to something greater, to the divine, to whatever it is we feel in meditation, and to nature, if we can forge that inner connection, and from that place, if we can imagine what our world would be like and what we would love to bring in, and then just focus on that and taking steps towards that, then the problems that seem so big and scary and hairy will start to fall away naturally because we're focusing on what great looks like.
I think yes, but that would scare if I was listening to that, I would also get scared as like, you mean I've got to be this, and this, and conscious, and from that point I can see things. And in a way, yes, but it's okay, just step for whatever you know. If you know something, just do a little bit of whatever that is, and the little bits will actually combine into something. But if you've got the capacity to do more. So I'll use this one. The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Stephen Covey. On that, you've got the circle of concern. So everyone's got concerns, and you poured all of your concerns in there. Write them all down, the whole lot. The environment, the other. And in the center, you've got your circle of influence. And your circle of influence is anything you can do that will influence something. And anything outside your circle of influence, inside your circle of concern, you're not influencing. All you're doing is going blah, 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 blah. If they did, if they'd only do this, then that'd be all right. If they don't, it's like you hear it constantly. I hear myself do it constantly. So what can I influence? Because the more you work on what you can influence, the more that influence grows. And the more that grows, the more your concerns that you've got out here start to be able to come in here, and you are doing something about it. But don't try and chunk them all. It's like trying to be a bloody black belt when you're not. Come back into where you are and do what you can from where you are, and feel good the fact that you are doing that. And that will feel good, and therefore you'll want more. And I think that's probably where my little addiction for doing things comes from. And that works in business in exactly the same way. So that's how I make a difference in business, lived businesses. I've changed businesses from one thing to something that is worthwhile growing and prosperous and people enjoying it. And that's purely by focusing on what I can do, not what I can't do, but being aware of those things.
Yeah, I love that. And what comes to me when you say that is your earlier statement around just asking yourself, what is it I want to feel? I want to enjoy. I want to feel purpose, right? And so then a simple question is like, well, what feels purposeful today? What is something that's pulling me, it's drawing me, or lights me up? It could be something so small. It could be actually going into nature and going for a dip in the ocean and just appreciating that. It doesn't have to be, because there's so many things you could do, and the mind will give you all the different things and say, oh, you should be saving, everyone from poverty, and you should be doing all these things. But actually, inside us all is this little compass that is wanting to show us what's purposeful for us. And that inevitably comes with contribution and service, whether it's to nature, whether it's to other people, because we're tuned to, in doing what lights us up, contribute more than we take. And so what I'm curious about is, what are those things for you that you are now being naturally drawn to in the world?
At the moment, I'm weaving things together. So I'm working on some workshops. The one that I mentioned with my best buddy on the business side of things. And whenever we talk business, it always broadens out to how we as humans are dealing with things. So that'll be an interesting one. I'm working on a couple of 1 to 2 day workshop. And that will be on helping people come to what I call the quality of life statements with a purpose statement as well. That's working through the values, but there's different ways of doing it. And sometimes when you say, oh, not another bloody values workshop, but that helps to ground things, and particularly if you do it properly. And then the quality of life statements are not just, here is my statement of purpose, but here are all of the other aspects of my life. And those other aspects of purpose are meaningful to me. And then what feeds those and what takes away from them. And then as you do that, you get greater clarity on what is meaningful to you. Then I take it a little bit further and do another exercise. Again, one of the ones from the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which is here I am, I've walked into a funeral, and in there is me lying down. And then I'm listening to what people are saying about me as a eulogy, but they're being totally honest. They're going, David, you may do this, but you don't listen as well as you should. You sometimes listen, but you're trying to find the next thing to say. So they're saying those things. And then you write what it is you want them to say. And then there's another exercise that I do after that, which is the wishing for yourself or the wishing for your child. What is it that you would wish? And then the question is why, until you get down to that core thing. By the time you finish that, you're actually kind of got a whole lot of stuff that helps you understand you, and you're starting to step forward, and there's some exercises I do from there. The other one is this warm data lab that I'm currently doing. I've got one that I'm hosting shortly. I've done another one. This is a thing that Nora Bateson did, and she's a remarkable lady. Her father was Gregory Bateson, and then his father was, William Bateson, and they were all philosophers and made a difference in the world. And Gregory Bateson coined the cybernetics as a word and a definition. And the beauty of Warm Data Lab is it connects people in a way in conversation that broadens their perspective and shows the interconnectivity of all of the things that we're looking at. So that instead of trying to solve this and this and this, you're seeing how they're all connected. That when I do something here, it has these other things. And it's a little bit like meadow view. Is the flowers in the meadow working together so beautifully how can we look at everything in a broader perspective. And what I also love about it is it's you go in and we all have our opinions, but to have that opinion when you're listening and you're talking broadened in such a way that it's not as fixed, because we exist in a world of polarization. And if we can break the polarization and come more into, I've got an opinion, but I don't know if it's right. I've just got an opinion. You know, quite frankly, I'm so much better when I don't know, because I'm curious and I'm listening. And if I can find a way, and that's why I love the warm data one, because it seems to do that in a very natural way. There's no outcomes, there's no notes, there's just an opening up of perspective. I want to be able to take that and then blend it into what I call future view to now. And that will be, here is that opening up. And then the next question I want to pose is, and what's the culture that we could have in the future? And how will you be in that culture? So that we actually do that and even then take a couple of notes. And when we identify how we could be in a culture, and there's obviously a lot more words than I'm doing here, not what's happening, but how could we be? Then you start to frame that and you start to live it a little bit. All of these things are not about having them up here or here or here. They're about actually doing things that bring that into your being. And the more we can bring people into that being, our being, the more that broadens up and people are having that sense of purpose, joy in their life, and other people are attracted to it. And I see that that has the capacity, when I'm saying this continuum, of opening up that continuum in the middle, of helping them to understand in a simple, very simple way that they don't have to hold so tight. They don't have to fit into a particular group and all of their way of viewing things, but they can have their own opinions, and those opinions will make a difference. Then I've got the purpose chair, which came out of doing the Mastery of Business and Empathy with the Small Giants Academy, which was one of the most beautiful experiences, because you've got a group of 40 people from all over the world, predominantly in Australia, there to identify what's a good society, what's a business running in a good society, and what is a good life. And all of it is structured through creating a business or an organization in a very talented way, but by not saying this is what your opinion, this is where you should go, by giving you both sides of the picture that you can weigh up to be able to come to what that is. And out of that, they always want you to do a presentation, 5-minute presentation. And I actually did, this is David Johnston from Radio JOY, speaking Beyond Tomorrow Co. So we started talking about what it could be, and about schools that are actually teaching kids. So this was part of the radio announcement, teaching kids how to deal with themselves and how to deal with others as part of the main part of the curriculum. That most of the lessons, 70% of lessons, had to be outside of the classroom and be, you're doing things, and that homework was no longer mandatory, that kids get to go and play. So I'm just playing with concepts, whether that's the best way or not the best way, I'm not here to say. I just know that if you put more effort into nurturing a human to go out into the world, not to just fulfill a working thing, but to be a living being, the whole thing changes if we can get back to there. So it's those sort of things that really make a difference. And then as I was doing that, there was this niggling thing that is probably from way back when I looked at those stars that time. Just I started looking at society and going, why are they being so mean? Why are they having this war? Why are they doing that? it just doesn't make sense. Why would we destroy these things? So I used to, with Weleda, and also when I represented the health industry with government, ask them, but what about the future generations? Or what would Steiner think about what you're doing? Or what would, what's the influence of the future? What could we learn from the past? So I created the purpose chair. I'm going to bring it up. Don't know if it can be seen, but this represents nature. And this is our little blue planet. And anyone that's been out in the stars and looking down, it just has a different view of life. And within that, it's like that's what we're looking after. Here you've got the 7 generation ahead thinking. So there's actually 7 babies in there. So generation, generation, generation. And that's a way of viewing what am I doing and what will it impact there. This is the wisdom from the ancestors that we need to reflect on. And this is allowing that sunflower, that everything takes time, and the sunflower always faces the sun. And it also has Fibonacci in it, which is universally within so many things, and the sharing of abundance. And then on this side, you've got this beautiful thing about how important children are and how important elderly people are. And a Hopi saying that goes, does it grow corn? And that means, is this worth doing? Because if it's not, you don't. So it questions those things. And on the other side, you have, let's reflect on the indigenous wisdom that exists within this world. And on the back, other than the QR code that'll take you to a place that'll explain this in more detail, you have about stakeholder rather than just shareholder. And down here, Ubuntu. Do you know Ubuntu?
No.
Okay, so it's Zulu, Uganda, somewhere around there. There were these kids running wild, having such a wonderful time. And someone saw them and said, you guys are so fast. That's fantastic. What about if I put all of these sweets and lollies and fruits down here and you line up and I'll say go and you run down and whoever gets there first gets them all. So they all giggling and they go up and he goes, go, and they're sprinting down and their legs are running so fast. And just as they get close, they reach out and they hold each other's hand and they all come around it together. And he said, why did you do that? One of you could have them all. And they looked at him and said, I am because we are. And when that settles in you, I am because of all the people around me. You take me out of it and I'm not. And that's, we need each other. We are a connected type of being. And the more we can come into connection with each other and stop the crap that we go on with at times, the better it is. And then this last one down here is, how do I want to be in this meeting, in this discussion, in this day? So this is now sitting in boardrooms across the country. I've now done 7 reprints and I was away for 8 months since I did it. And it's now in 8 politicians. It's got the Future Council, which is the movie Damon Gameo's done, that's taken 8 kids from in a little yellow bus all around Europe to go and interview Nestle and IGA. And the kids that see the movie love it so much, they want to set up their own councils. So he's endorsed this and now is going to give it to the kids so that when they set up their councils, they've got a reminder of what they're doing. And the last one person that I gave it to, which is really quite interesting, is a tattoo artist. And she's sitting it in her parlor because it may just change the tone of the conversations he has as well. So that is one of the steps that we're doing. And then I've got my company Beyond Tomorrow Co., which is the consultancy one, and I'm writing a book.
So just a few bits going on there.
Yeah.
Just a few bits going on. And for anyone who is really curious about the purpose chair and what, if you're listening to this on audio, if you just turn on the video, you'll be able to see everything that he described. And there's a beautiful little cardboard chair with some lovely artwork on it, like hand painted. I have one of them sitting in my office as well. And it's just that reminder, as you spoke to into the very start of this conversation, this continuous reminder to become conscious in each moment, and that we can choose how we want to show up over and over and over again. And if you fall down, just keep coming back to it. And, I mean, there's so much in what you shared, and so much that I feel like is being expressed through you, because I don't get the sense that you're doing any of that from a place of look at me and all the things I'm doing. I feel that in all of it, what you're doing is you're creating spaces for people to connect and come together and be part of solutions. In Warm Data Lab, in your consulting, in the purpose chairs, like you're creating spaces and tools for others to connect to and realize that they're part of the solution as well. And I think that's a central theme in everything you've shared today, in how you lead, and in how you create the spaces for others to be more fully themselves. And as you become more fully yourself, and continue to grow. And it's just been a beautiful conversation, and the energy that you've brought to it, and the hopefulness, and the playfulness as well to it. It's been a real privilege to be involved. Is there anything you'd like to share about how people can connect to you and learn more, or anything you felt like you weren't able to express that you'd like to?
There's always more. And, the thing is that I can't stop my ego. So it's there. And that's the interesting thing, because I used to kind of go away, go away. But the more I step forward towards something, the less that they're potent. And that's, again, the sunflower look towards the sun. If I turn around, I see shadows. And there's nothing wrong with my shadows. But they can form any shape that they want. As I step forward, I see things moving positively, and that's where I choose to put my energy. I'm consult businesses, but I'm also going to be doing the workshop. So hopefully there'll be more happening over the coming year, and really just enjoy life, I mean, God. So in my diary, I've got 7,595 days yesterday till I'm 93. So and I do those as a countdown, and there's nothing morbid about it for me. It's like, how was my day? And I don't always think of it. I still jot it down. I still can subtract one every time. But every now and then, it's like, so that is a day gone. And maybe I'll live tonight. Maybe I'll live longer. Maybe I won't. Who knows? It just was a game that I'm playing with myself. But how important is the opportunity of every day to be lived, not consumed?
Yeah, what a beautiful message to leave people with. And we'll link how people can contact you down in the description, as always. And if you enjoyed this conversation, the biggest thing you can do to support the podcast is just to follow or subscribe. And we can keep bringing you amazing conversations like this and connecting with people. So, David, thank you so much for everything that you're doing in the world and being in the world, and for really sharing that it's possible to be at the most senior levels of leadership, to be in the most powerful positions, but to be there with an open heart and to create more harmony. And I'm reminded of a line in the Tao Te Ching, which is, when a leader leads in the Tao, the people say they've done it themselves. And that is the golden sweet spot for everyone listening to this. And I think you're sharing a great example of how to be that. So thank you.
My pleasure.